On March 28, 2026, 3,300 separate events drew an estimated 8 to 9 million people into the streets. It stands as the largest single-day protest in the history of the United States. The mobilization reached from New York City, where 350,000 people marched, to deep red strongholds in Idaho and Wyoming. Locally, it manifested in small towns like Dregs, and internationally in cities like Rome and Paris. The White House dismissed the turnout entirely. Spokesperson Abigail Jackson called the rallies a product of, quote, leftist funding networks, and argued that only the reporters paid to cover the events actually cared about them. Yet, despite the historic scale, the No Kings movement has no singular, charismatic leader. It lacks a central spokesperson and operates without a specific list of policy demands. This creates a paradox for political science. This lack of centralized leadership could be a structural weakness, or it could be a highly resilient new blueprint for political resistance. While 8 million people in the streets proves mass mobilization is possible, the movement's survival depends on whether pure outrage can function without a figurehead. The initial energy for the rallies came from a series of visceral escalations in early 2026, most notably the fatal shootings of civilians Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal immigration agents during a surge in Minneapolis. Outrage turned into a legal crisis when the state of Minnesota took the step of suing the federal government for access to investigative evidence. Hennepin County officials argued they could not trust federal agencies to investigate their own officers. From that focal point, other major grievances rapidly attached themselves to the movement, from the outbreak of the 2026 Iran war to the rollback of transgender rights. This is the container strategy. Indivisible and 5051 built a framework to hold disparate advocacy groups simultaneously without merging agendas. Organizing around a single policy often fractures coalitions. The No Kings banner avoids this through a broad anti-authoritarian message, allowing everyone to participate. The name itself serves as the recruitment tool. It is an emotional catch-all designed to maximize the movement's footprint across a fractured political landscape. Political scientists warn that scale alone is not power. While millions in the streets creates visibility, visibility does not automatically translate into the ability to force change. Historical movements, like the Montgomery bus boycott, achieved results because they had clear leaders who could leverage the protests to negotiate specific, tangible concessions from the bus company. Movements lacking designated negotiators or clear legislative goals, like Occupy Wall Street, often dissipate once the initial media attention fades, failing to achieve structural change. Organizers argue that this historical critique ignores the reality of the current administration. They contend that you cannot defeat a cult of personality by building a rival figurehead. They have chosen to build power strictly through a decentralized network. In their view, a leaderless movement is more resilient because there is no single person who can be targeted, compromised, or removed. This decentralized architecture is a deliberate defense against an administration that thrives on targeting high-profile political opponents. The actual metric for success here isn't a federal policy change or a sudden legislative win. Organizers are focused on local absorption. This diagram shows their objective, converting 8 million single-day marchers into a permanent network of hyper-local activists. This strategy involves marchers returning to their communities to join neighborhood zoning meetings, defend local elections, and participate in community ice watches. This shift toward localized action makes the resistance harder for a centralized government to dismantle, as there is no single point of failure. To these protesters, the administration represents a multi-front adversary. They believe the only effective counter is a multi-front, decentralized resistance. The March 28 protests established the foundation for a long-term war of attrition. The goal is to sustain a decentralized opposition that can outlast the administration, block by block.